we were just talking about painful moments. Buffalo Bills fans having a hard time getting over that interception. And you were the coach of the Cowboys for the Dez Bryant play?
I was.
Is that your toughest play that still stays with you of all the plays when you were coaching or a player?
I would say two plays. The Dez Bryant play would be one, and then the other play was a couple years later in the divisional round when Aaron Rodgers rolled left and made that amazing throw. So, yeah, we had a couple interesting ones at the end of games. With a chance to go to the NFC Championship game, and they go right to the end of the game against the Packers and Aaron Rodgers.
But the Dez Bryant call, what were you told in the moment, and were you okay with what they told you about that non-touchdown?
Well, I feel like I'm an expert in this area because I've talked about this a lot with a lot of people through the years. I was bothered by the call for a couple different reasons. The number of times I had heard prior to that play, how long do you need to catch the ball? And there was always this idea of, hey, all you need is time enough to make a football move. And the officials who would tell me this, they would say, hey, he doesn't have to make a football move. It's just time enough to make a football move. And if you look at the Dez Bryant play, he catches the ball just outside the 5-yard line. It was one of the most amazing catches, I believe, in the history of football. He catches it and he switches hands with it. He gets 1 foot down, 2 foot down. The third, he lunges. So he switched hands. He's gotten the feet down, lunges a football move. He has the ball here. He extends it. These are all football moves over the course of 5 yards. So he's essentially running with the ball to get himself down there to make that extension. And, for them to come back and say he needs to survive the ground, this thing that seemed to trump everything else, I'm like, how many times have I heard from you guys? He doesn't even have to make a football move. He just needs time enough. And literally he made 7 football moves over the course of 5 yards. And then the other part of it is it was ruled a catch on the field by a guy who was standing right there. And so for them to come into it afterwards and say, it's indisputable that this is not a catch, it was really a hard thing for me to comprehend. And if you remember after that, it started with Calvin Johnson, and then it was the Dez play. And then for about 3 or 4 years after that, every catch or non-catch was viewed through that same prism, and they completely screwed up what a catch was. I mean, guys are running down the field stumbling, and they have it for 10 yards, but he falls down, and all of a sudden that's not a catch. And so a little bit like the Tuck rule, it took him about 5 years to quietly try to change it. But I think we're kind of back to that same place, and I think it's frustrating for a lot of people.
What did you think in the moment of the interception in the Broncos-Bills game?
I still think it's a catch. I do. 100 years ago in football, you had to tackle a guy and lay on top of him and keep him down. If you look at the old films, they tackle him and the guy keeps getting back up, right? That's rugby. We're not playing rugby, right? We're playing football. So for him to make that catch, secure the ball, go to the ground, be touched, and then have the defender rip the ball out when they're on the ground, what are we doing? It's a catch.
I thought it was a catch in the moment, and the more I looked at it, the more it felt like the defender was getting his hands on the ball before they hit the ground. First of all, I was surprised that they called it an interception, and I knew they weren't going to overturn it. If they called it a catch, I don't think they would have overturned it either.
Yeah, and again, that's what takes me back to the Dez Bryant play. It was called a catch, and to say indisputable evidence overturns it. I have a regret about that play, Dan. Afterwards in the game, as a head coach, you're always preaching no excuses. And I talked to our guys about it. Hey, that was one play. We had 56 minutes before, and we had 4 minutes afterwards to win that game. So we're not gonna rely on officials to make the right calls. It's our job as players and coaches. Having said that, something I wish I should have said was, in the moment, I get all that. There's no excuses. We had our opportunities. but Tony Romo made an amazing throw, and Dez Bryant made one of the greatest catches in the history of the National Football League. And for me, as a coach, as a former player, and as a fan of football, this play should have been in the lore of Bradshaw to Swan over Mark Washington in the Super Bowl, falling, stumbling down. This should have been Roger Staubach to Butch Johnson. All of those amazing plays in the history of the game, and somehow it got caught up in officiating. And I thought about this the other day because coming out of that game, what did we talk about? We talked about a catch or no catch, or an interception, and then we talked about the pass interferences on the following drive. Right? They let the players play a certain way the whole game, and then all of a sudden we're calling these plays at the end. And I have nothing against Denver; they did a fantastic job all year long. But I hate, as a fan of football, that officiating in these big games is what the conversation is.